सलवात नारे सलवात
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد صلى عليه وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد فقد قال أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب عليه الصلاة والسلام في أصناف المسيئين والناس على أربعة أصناف منهم من لا يمنعه الفساد في الأرض إلا مهانة نفسه وكلالة حده ونضيض ظفره صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. If you remember last week's discussion, we discussed the first part of this khutbah number 32 from Nahj al-Balagha and the changing of values. We talked about certain values in the time of Imam alayhi that were changing, and Imam recognized those values, understood it. Let me just remove the screen quickly. We don't need the update. And we went through the discussion about that. And then today, in this second section, it was alluded to how Imam is going to talk about different groups of people and categories of people. Today, inshallah, we'll get into that discussion where recognizing the world seekers. So here Imam goes through 4 different categories of people, and we'll, inshallah, keeping the time in mind, go through these 4 categories as quickly as possible. Initially, there are some, again, this is Nahj al-Balagha, right? So this is peak of eloquence. You'll find the words are extraordinary. The words are not used in regular discussions, and those are the words that make the kalam of Imam stand out above the kalam of other individuals. So you'll find some istilahat, some terminologies. Well, we're not Arabs, so we may not pick them, but they are outstanding. They stand out. They are different than normally how people will address things. Imam says people are of 4 groups. In this part of the sermon, Imam presents a precise and insightful analysis. So he's basically analyzing. This is a very good study, actually. People go through anthropology, they study human beings, their behaviors, and all that stuff. And as is, even if you haven't studied anything, just by living amongst the people, you're able to, through your experience, understand different types of people, different groups and categories of people. Now, they're all, for example, everyone sitting over here, follower of the same madhab, follows the same imams, follows the same tashayyo. But even amongst us, you can say, Maulana, I can divide this group over here into 2, 3, 4 different categories. Depends on where they come from, how they speak, for example. There are other areas. Now, some very obvious categories of people based on maybe color of skin and other stuff, and some behavioral related differences that we can also derive when you travel with someone, right? This is one of the ways Imam has said, if you want to recognize someone, if you want to understand someone, what do? Go on a travel with them, and you'll understand them. So Imam gives this insightful analysis regarding the division of those who are, he calls, world seekers. So all these 4 people are seeking the world. His analysis is not applicable only in his time. So don't think that these analyses are Imam specifically speaking about in the 1st century of Islam. No. This is a group of people that have always existed, and they exist even today. So right away, Imam says, فَالنَّاسُ عَلَىٰ أَرْبَةِ أَصْنَافٍ, and people are 4 kinds. مِنْهُمْ مَنْ لَا يَمْنَعُهُ الْفَسَادَ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا مَهَانَةُ نَفْسِهِ. One group among them are those who do not commit corruption on the earth only because their spirit is weak, their sword is dull, and their wealth is little. That is what's stopping them from corruption. What does that tell you? That tells you in their heart there is corruption. If they had the means, they would have done it. Because they're lacking the means, their sword is weak, their wealth is little, their spirits are also scanty. So therefore, because of lacking these things, otherwise, if you give this to someone for one day, they'll be the biggest corruptors of this world. So in common expression, they simply cannot find the means. Otherwise, they would be expert swimmers in the ocean of corruption. That's what they would be. But they don't have the means to commit that. So in reality, these are people who are depressed from lack of means. Otherwise, the inside of their being is filled with evil, corruption, oppression, and wrongdoing. Naturally, such individuals wait for the right opportunity to reveal what lies inside them. And not enough, you'll be able to pick these things from them. Therefore, one should never be deceived by their calm and harmless outward appearance. Sometimes that's misleading. And, we go on face value. We go on the appearance. And that sometimes misleads us. When the divine leaders of society identify such individuals, they must watch over them carefully and prevent the resources and the opportunities from being misused. Because if they gain, how many times you've heard, if someone gains access to that information technology that we have today, if someone lands in the wrong hands, then of course they can cause corruption. Quran refers to these people. As we've been mentioning since the very first khutbah, Imam's kalam is inspired by Quran. You always find a reference to what Imam is saying, while Imam is, he's all knowledgeable, but he bases everything that he says based on Quran. There's a reference to that in Quran. It says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يُعْجِبُكَ قَوْلُهُ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Right there. Surah Baqarah. Among them are those whose speech in worldly life impresses you. Have you seen many of our community members, fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, they get impressed by the worldly figures. They're so impressed by them. And right away, they imitate them. And they call God to witness what is in their hearts. Yet they are the most hostile of opponents. Quran says this. And when they gain authority, they strive upon the earth to cause corruption in it and destroy crops, livestock, and God does not those who cause corruption. Then Imam goes to the trait of the second group of people. So first you understood. I'm not testing here, but first was those who are incapable, weak. Otherwise, they would have also gone ahead and done the same thing. Second group, Imam, along with their goals and ultimate end, says another group, minhum al-muslitu li-sayfihi. Another group are those who have unsheathed their swords, meaning their swords are not dull, their swords are strong, openly displaying their corruption and wickedness. They don't care what may come. They don't care who's saying what. Someone's, criticizing them. They're openly doing it. Let people say whatever they want to. And they have gathered their cavalry and infantry for this purpose. Not only that they have opened their swords, not only that they're openly attacking and doing the corruption, they got cavalry with them as well. They got followers with them as well. They prepared their inner souls for oppression and corruption and have ruined their religion. Their goal is exactly what Imam refers to. Hence, we lead to the third. Their aim, actually, the second one Imam is describing, their aim is to seize some portion of the worthless good of this world. Look how Imam described the goods of this world. How does he describe it? Worthless. So this second group, this is what they're trying to do. Or to obtain leadership over a group. Power. We see that. Or to climb upon a pulpit. This is scary. Who climbs on a pulpit? Usually scholars or pseudo-scholars. So these pseudo-scholars are going to climb onto the pulpit and put on the garment of leadership, delivering false sermons to the people. Look how metaphorically with kinaya, Imam is highlighting. I don't want you to think about people of this time right now. Go back to the time of Imam Ali. Because sometimes if we're thinking of both eras, here we're going to start picturing people of our time. You can do that later on. Go back to the time of Imam Ali. Who is he referring to? Those who don the garments of religious people, giving false sermons, and what do they want? They just want leadership over a group. Does that remind you, ring bell of Saqifa Bani Saida? Thus, in a few short phrases, Imam points to their outward actions and corruption within their hearts and their base and ugly objectives. In reality, this group exerts all their efforts and energy to become what? As Quran calls them, to be Pharaoh, Fir'aun and Samiri. That's what their efforts are being used for. Individuals such as the fire starters of the Battle of Jamal, the instigators in Talha and Zubair, and the Battle of Siffin, those who instigated these battles to come over, clear examples of this group. Some acted for wealth, and you come to Karbala, you see even more fascist examples. When Imam is trying to guide, he says to Umar Asad that, why are you doing this? He says, Shahr-e-Ray. Amir al-Mu'mineen, of course he was referring to Yazid, La'atullah, he said, has promised me what? Shahr-e-Ray, present-day Tehran. Imam, what did he say? You all remember the response. Imam said, forget Shahr-e-Ray. You won't even taste the barley and the jaw and the gandum and kapa. You won't even taste the wheat and the barley of that city. What is Imam saying over here? That you won't eat the wheat. So he responded by saying, okay, I'll eat the rice. He's thinking Imam is speaking in literal sense. Imam says, forget about the city that he has promised you. It's a false promise. You won't even get to taste the crops of that land. But the worldly desire was to overcome him. Some for position and power, as Umar Asad did, as Shimr did, and some for the desire to sit in the place of the Prophet of Islam. That's what Abu Sufyan and his al was trying to do. And for these aims, they unleashed all that evil, corruption, and destruction. There's so many characters that are coming to mind. I can speak about all of those characters, but you, mashallah, have a good grasp on history as well, especially that part of the history, because we've been discussing it a lot. Now you understand what these people are. Then Imam points to the outcome of their deeds. He says, how evil a trade it is that you, O corrupt and the rebellious human, have arranged for yourself. That you consider the world as a prize for your own soul, and that you exchange it for what you have with God, the reward which your Lord has promised you. Of course, this person is lacking that iman. So it is natural that this wicked and corrupt group, those who struggle restlessly to attain the wealth and position, neither acknowledges the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nor listens to the call of the Anbiya and the call of the conscious. Forget about the call of Anbiya. You're running a deaf ear to the call of awliya. But you have this inner conscious. The hadith beautifully mentions that inna lillahi hujjatain. There are two proofs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hujjatun zahira wa hujjatun batina. Hujjat zahir is imams and the prophets. Okay, you say, well, I'm not close to the imams and the prophets. And you're not paying attention to them. Second hujjat is hujjatun batina, fahiyal uqul. Allah has given that to you, sound mind, so that you can go ahead and make a conscious or conscientious effort. Nor submit to the command of reason. They exchange these priceless treasures for a filthy and insignificant price, and therefore selling their religion and faith for the fleeting goods of this world. Quran talks about it. Again, reference to Quran, what Imam is saying. Surah, mentioned over there, Baqarah 16. It says, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ اشْتَرَوُا الضَّلَالَةَ بِالْهُدَىٰ فَمَا رَبِحَتْ تِجَارَتُهُمْ وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ. They are the ones who have purchased what? Misguidance in exchange of what? Guidance. They're ready to make that trade. So their trade has brought them no profit, and they have not been guided. So they are the ones who have sold guidance for misguidance and gotten no trade for it. This is while the existential capital of a human being is so precious, so valuable, that it is sold for anything less than the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a loss. If you trade this for anything less than razayat of Allah, it's lost. That's why Quran again says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرَضَاتِ اللَّهِ. Among them are people who do this trade of their nafs for what? Marzi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu raufun bil ibad. This ayat in particular was revealed when? When Amirul Mu'mineen slept on the bed of Rasulullah on the night of Hijrat. This is how Allah rewards you. He mentions you in Quran in these fond words, and your mention remains forever. This verse, of course, as I said about Laylatul Mabit, about Imam. Imam then himself says it. This famous word from Imam in Nahj al-Balagha, another place, he says, if you are going to go ahead and trade your soul for anything, because after mentioning its value, if there's any price for it, he said, إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ ثَمَنٌ. First he denies, he said, there is no price for it. You cannot put a price tag. You cannot say this much, this much, this much. He said, لَيْسَ, surely your souls have no price except إِلَّا الْجَنَّةَ فَلَا تَبِيئُوهَا إِلَّا بِهَا. There's no price for it. If there is a price, it's Jannat. How do you get this Jannat? By pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the Imam turns to the third group. The third group mentioned here. Third group, those who are masters of deception. Now you're getting into the categories of those who are becoming experts. Go back to the time of Imam. Think about the people that Imam may be referring to. Look, he doesn't mention any names. Sometimes that, throws you off. Imam, this is not Quran. You could have mentioned the names easily. But look at how Imam is careful. That's why many of our brothers in Islam, they do not agree that who Imam is referring to over here. Well, we all know very surely who Imam is referring to. Those who are masters of deception, and describes them with precise and calculated qualities. He said, وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَطْلَبُ الدُّنْيَا بِعَمَلِ الْآخِرَةِ. These are the more cunning people, like the Amr As and the Muawiyas of the time, who will make sure that their amal are all accounted for. People do not see any flaw in their amal. They're leading the prayers, they're offering their goods, they're making sure that their Islamic religious face and identity is intact. Nobody can point fingers to them. But internally, what's in their hearts is something that comes out. So Imam says another group of people are those who seek the world through the deeds of the hereafter and do not seek the hereafter through the deeds of this world. In reality, their goal is same as the goal of the second group, worldly gain. End result is same. With the difference that the second group seizes worthless goods of the world through force and expression, oppression, and showing their real face. This third group is at another level of munafiqat. They want the same thing, but hiding under the guise and doing it subtly. Not, So the difference between Muawiyah and Yazid, let's just put it that way. Yazid is doing it with his open face, with all the corruption that he does. Everybody knows about it. Well, the father did it how? By keeping a very good image of himself. Cunning. I won't call it clever, I will call it cunning. That's what Imam actually called him. Someone compared Amirul Mu'mineen. He said, what do you think about the politics of Muawiyah? Imam said, Tilkan nakira. He's cunning. Someone said, Imam, you don't know how to lead. You don't know politics. Imam is a failure in politics. These words were uttered. He responded by saying, he didn't. People then respected and stood up for Imam. He said, if you need corruption and fasad, that is the integral part of the politics. No, that's not what you find in Imam al-Salam. Hence, I'm alluding to other things. that we find in the kalam of sixth Imam as well, when he said, Salawat bheji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When he declared, and some people thought Imam is giving a command. He said, don't become part of politics. Don't go into siyasa. So you find these ahadith from sixth Imam. But he's not saying siyasat and politics is a no-go area altogether. He then gives example, the siyasat and the politics which is corrupted in his time especially. He said, don't be part of that. All right, both groups are misguided, unjust, worldly seeker, with the condition this third group may, in some respect, be even worse than the previous one, because they turned the religion of God into a tool. At least the previous group was not hiding anything. They are using deen as a tool for what their worldly ambitions are. Through this behavior, they destroy the worldly life and the religion of other people as well. Then Imam uses a set of vivid analogies to describe their behavior. In 5 statements, he clearly exposes their true nature. We have that? Yeah. He said, قَدْ وَزَخْرَفَ مِن نَفْسِهِ وَشَمَّرَ مِن ثَوْبِهِ وَقَارَبَ مِن خَطْوِهِ وَطَامَنَ مِن شَخْصِهِ وَاتَّخَذَ سِتْرَ اللَّهِ ذَرِيَةً إِلَى الْمَعْصِيَةِ لِلْأَمَانَةِ. They display themselves as humble, nicest people, muttaqi, parhezgar. They shorten their steps. Meaning what? What is shortening step? Meaning you take qadam in a dignified manner, presenting themselves to be bawaqar. They gather up their garments, appearing to avoid impurity that touches. They decorate themselves with the appearance of trustworthiness, and then they take the covering of God as a means towards Him. I remember there's a story in the time of our Prophet. Rasulullah was giving, a lecture, and every type of people were sitting in front of him. So there was this beggar who walked in to the masjid. He came up and he sat next to one of the dignitaries. That dignitary, when he saw this, apparently filthy, wearing clothes, person has come and sat next to him, he went like this. He collected himself. Rasulullah let go of the khutbah. And he asked him, what did you do that for? He said, and of course he was ashamed. Rasulullah didn't care about, giving this example in front of others. You and I, when we see something like this, we should not call people out. We should give wa'az to them in private. But this is Rasulullah. He called him out. He didn't have any response. He was biting his own tongue. And then he acknowledged his mistake. He said, I saw this man come in and, he's probably not the cleanest and all that. And so I felt, and so I reserved myself. But I'm willing to make up for this. He was a wealthy man. He said, I gave 1/7 of my wealth or 1/5 of my wealth to this person, this beggar. And people, MashaAllah, Allahu Akbar, Takbir, this and that. And then they started congratulating this beggar. Now look, until now you didn't have, a single coin in your pocket. Now 1/5 of this person's wealth, which could feed you and your future generations. Bravo, congratulations, this and that. The man said, I don't need it. He declined. He said, are you crazy? Wealth is knocking on your door. If it came to me, I would never say no. The wealth is knocking on your door and you're turning it down. This is from Allah. Yes, it's coming from this man's wealth, but this is from Allah. He said, what is the guarantee that after getting this man's wealth, I will not become like him when another individual like me comes and sits next to me? That I would not mistreat him the way he mistreated me. So I'm better off without having to worry about that. So Imam mentions 5 things. They decorate themselves with the appearance of trustworthiness, and they take the covering of God as a means toward sins. Of course, outwardly they're humble. They're calm, dignified, indifferent to this world, and what's in it. They adorn themselves with the slogans of righteousness, and then they misuse God's concealment of fault. Allah is sattarul uyub. He keeps even their faults hidden. He didn't say, I'll only keep the faults of those who are righteous hidden from you. You know, every creation, every khalq, makhluk of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah is going to go ahead and be sattarul uyub for them. So then, of course, what happens? You don't see, when their uyub have a parda on it, you don't really see what these people are. So walking in the path of disobedience and rebellion. It is possible that this group outwardly believes in Allah and the day of resurrection, but certainly this faith has not penetrated the depths of their being. Otherwise, how could they exchange something so precious for something which is so cheap and insignificant? For this reason, it is mentioned in the traditions that this person is a hypocrite, outwardly hypocrite. On the day of resurrection, when the veils are lifted, right? When all the veils are lifted, when we can see here Allah is keeping it hidden, right? Here Allah is concealing it. Here He's sattarul uyub. Over there, the veils will be removed. When the veils are lifted and the true face of such person, each person becomes manifest, it'll be addressed, Ya kafir, Ya fajir, Ya ghadir, Ya khasir. 4 categories. Or disbelievers, or the wicked one, or the treacherous one, or the loser. This is how this munafiq will be addressed. And it will be said to him, Habita amaluka wa batala ajruka fala khalasa lakal yawm. Your deeds are nullified. Your reward is gone. And there's no salvation for you today. So seek your reward from one who you used to act for. This person comes knocking on the door of Allah. Oh Allah, I did good deeds as well. I know. Who forgets their good deeds? You forget your misdeeds, but you never forget your good deed. If you helped someone 20 years ago, you still remember that. You will not forget. Especially when you see that person all the time, you say, well, remember 20 years ago? I did that for you. But you'll forget what you did last week, hurting that person. So this man will say to Allah, oh Allah, look, all the good deeds that I had done, I know for sure I did it. Allah will say, well, who were you showing it off to? People? Go seek your reward from them. Don't come knocking on my door. So without a doubt, this group, like the other 3 groups, did not exist only in the era of Imam ﷺ. You can see that they exist in this world, in this life. For this reason, the followers of truth must carefully watch them and not fall into their traps. Fortunately, many of them eventually expose themselves, right? And we're human beings. We're not. So with this fallibility, there will come a lapse. There will come a time when we make this mistake. I'll go through this quickly. Then Imam, in conclusion, or rather in continuation of this discussion, discusses, and Imam turns to the 4th group, the false ascetics and the pretentious renunciants, those who denounce everything. Minhum man aqadahu an talabil mulki du'ulatu nafse. Again, these istilahat are terminologies, is what has gotten and made this book to be Nahj al-Balagha. You don't find these istilahat, these terminologies in regular speech. Another group consists of those whose weakness, incapacity, and lack of means have prevented them from seeking power and position and have cut them off from all avenues. Their circumstances have confined them to their present state. So they have adorned themselves with the name of contentment and beautified themselves with the clothing of the people of asceticism, while at no time, neither in their evening nor the morning, have they ever been among the true zahideen and ascetics. So there's a similarity between this group and the first group. In other words, they are incompetent and weak individuals who throw the veil of asceticism and contentment over their incapacity. Hum to razi hain. Whatever Allah has given, hum razi hain. We are content. We're pleased. Alhamdulillah, we have everything. Alhamdulillah, what Allah has given, thanks. Their contentment is only for you. Their words of razayat and showing pleasure with the minimum that they have is only for you. But there's something else which they are desiring in their hearts. They're not true ascetics. Presenting their point of weakness as a point of strength. They're weak in capacity. They're lacking, just like the first group was lacking. But what are they doing? They're using that lackness into being the point of their strength and showing their asceticism. While they have never smelled true piety and contentment, and inwardly they are defeated world seekers. Of course, this group is of two types. Sometimes they adopt such garment to deceive people, to cover their weakness, and sometimes they even deceive themselves. When you do something so often, you're now doing what? You're not deceiving others. You're actually misleading and deceiving yourself. There's a discussion regarding the difference between the fourth and the first group. Remember, the first group was also incapable. On one hand, and between the fourth and the third group, on the other hand. What appears more fitting is that first group of world seekers are those who, due to weakness, incapacity, and lack of ability, withdraw into a corner and do not pursue wealth, status, or position. That was the first group that we described. But they do not insist on presenting this weakness and capacity to their strength, which is the difference in the fourth group. Fourth group is same as far as lacking all of these things. But the difference between these two groups is the fourth group is actually using this as a means of their strength. And as for the difference between the fourth and the third group, it is that the third group reaches positions through hypocrisy and attains their illegitimate goals by means of deception. In other words, what the oppressive tyrants seize from the worthless goods of this world through the face and domination, these people obtain through what? Hypocrisy and deceiving the people. They sell their religion for the world, and they acquire the goods of this world at the price of selling their nufus. Whereas the fourth group does not attain any position or status at all, but they content themselves with the fact that people assume they are content, they are zahideen, they're ascetic. When you come to speak to them, they will have this face, abus and qamtarira, that there's no one's more ascetic than them. Right away, they won't even talk to you because they're so zahid and parhezgar that lest your impurities will reach them and make them corrupted as well. Of course, the first and fourth groups share this in common, that they have, if they were to find an opportunity of oppression, what will they do? Right away they'll seize it. Right away they'll capitalize on it. Right away they will move forward with it. There's more discussion in this, but I'll remain content with this much, that Imam ﷺ describes this fourth group as those who are, apparently ascetic and zuhad. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and ability to be aware of who are in our surrounding and to understand the history. Tariq, how Amirul Mu'mineen explains in these beautiful words of his. Wa akhu da'wana and alhamdulillah.